Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Ryan Anchosti. I'm running for Arkansas District 24, which is Crawford County, part of Washington County. Of course, we know enforcement people, all that kind of stuff. In case anybody doesn't want to say Anchosti, I don't blame you. It starts with an I. It's 10 letters long. My call sign, I've spent 25 years in the Navy, is Chops, because nobody can pronounce it. So Senior Chief Chops is still running, coming out of retirement and running for office. I'm a rural, blue-collar, independent Democrat, I guess. You know,
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Be confident in that.
Yeah. Well, you know, so a little bit about me. I was born in generational poverty. You know, I'm that person that you guys are talking about that came to school, that didn't have food, that was asked by the other kids all the time, why do you wear the same clothes every day? The kid that the teachers regularly suspended, kicked out, expelled. My father never was educated past the 8th grade. Not because he was poor or whatever, but because he was exceptionally violent and because he couldn't stay in school. Both my parents were complete drug addicts. My mom finally got clean at 12 when I was 12, and my dad never did get clean. He died 6 years ago with a needle in his arm. You know, in and out of prison, and that's what I was born and raised to become. A violent fighter that fought people and ended up in jails. You know, if it wasn't for the stability of the U.S. Navy, that when I joined when I was 19, I would have probably ended up in prison or something along those lines. But it was education that brought me out of this. It was education. Education first through the Navy, through what's like trade school education. I was an aviation electrician's mate, a combat search and rescue swimmer, and then eventually I was a nuclear command and control flight engineer. I was controlling 300 direct reports and then a $3.2 billion budget to protect our nation in the event of a nuclear attack. This is what I did growing up in the Navy as an adult. Now, I also went ahead and got a formal education while in the Navy. I paid for it with my body, you know. So I don't have student loans, lucky for me. I've got a Bachelor's of Science in Organizational Leadership that I got from Southern Nazarene University, you know, a Bible college, and then I got my master's degree, Master's of Science in Business Management. I'm here because, in speaking about education and everything like that, because it isn't that important. And it's not a partisan issue. It shouldn't matter whether I'm a Democrat or a Republican. It should matter about I want to talk about the LEARNS Act. First, you know, one of the things that's shot out to me was 75 hours of community service required to graduate. My senior year in high school, I was working 70 hours a week on top of going to school. Why? Because I had to. I didn't have a parent that could provide anything for me. You know, this is what I did. 75 hours of community service would have killed me. If I didn't have that high school diploma, I couldn't have gotten into the Navy. I couldn't have done those things to pick myself up by my bootstraps. You know? And I can't help but notice that 75 hours is only required in public schools. How is this anything other than saying, hey, we don't want those rural kids to be able to perform that 75 hours. We want those poor kids to stay poor. And why is that happening? Why are we fighting all this poor and rich and all this kind of stuff? Well, I think that it's because the rich realize they can't compete with us. By the time I make it up to your level, you know, I may be blue collar as hell, but I've got a white collar education, and you can take the trailer park out of the way. I don't know what to tell you. But the fact of the matter is I see this as a way of policy specifically designed to keep the poor poor, to keep the meek meek. Yes. You know, food insecurity. Like we've mentioned several times, we're number one in the state. You know, we've had dominance. Political dominance by one party in this state for 50 years, you know, and in that time, what do we have to show for it? You can count the ribs on our kids better than any other state. Yeah. Congratulations, you know. I'm not okay with that, you know. We keep saying we need to fund public schools and do all this kind of stuff. Where's the money going to come from? Nobody wants to raise taxes. Well, how about this? How much do you pay in taxes if you're a teacher? You $50,000 a year, you pay taxes on every dollar you make as a teacher. Meanwhile, if you're wealthy and you make your money off of investment incomes, we only tax 50% of capital gains, period. At 50% of capital gains, we lose $86 million a year that the wealthy aren't paid. And if you can make over $10 million in one fiscal year, everything after that is tax-free. Raise your hand if you took advantage of the $10 million tax credit. I'm just curious, who's benefiting from this? You know? I can't see these policies and see it as anything other than keeping the poor down. And these lines are drawn across socioeconomic lines, and they'll bid race against race and everything else underneath these lines to keep people squabbling with each other and not pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and doing what they need to do to survive and succeed. In eliminating those tax cuts for the wealthy, we would make $118 million a year that we could put towards education. And I don't want to talk about education as just education and teachers' pay. It's all important. But why didn't we, the LEARNS Act include faculty pay? Why didn't it, staff pay, janitors pay, any of that stuff? Why? Because the people in charge of it had no idea what they were doing. They didn't have any foresight. Am I a project manager and a manager of people and a leader by nature? I'm also an educator. I've been educating the children of this nation as they come to me in the Navy. I've taught them how to jump out of helicopters or repair airplanes, fly. I've done all of that. I've been an educator this entire time, and even today I'm a curriculum developer, writing educational material for our state police and federal, for the Department of Transportation. I know what this stuff is about, I also know that we can do this without eating into teachers' prep time. Why can't teachers have their time to be able to prep their classes properly? Why can't we fund all this stuff? Why? Because we can't do it and keep billionaires happy. We also decided that what we need to do is we need to make it easier to fire teachers. So what does a teacher do now that they're wrongfully fired? Their only recourse is to go to the school board. How do you know it's not the school board that wanted the teacher fired? Where's the recourse outside of that? Where's the responsibility? Who's going to stand up for these people? Well, I am. You know what I mean? We've been lied to for a long time. We've been told one thing. We've been told that children are important, but not according to our policies.
Right.
We've been told that they're precious, but we're okay with letting them go hungry. It stops now. We've forgotten about this robbery, and we've forgiven it. This is not about where you live and whatever. This is about whether or not you have what it takes to make it, and whether or not we can let the country and the state get out of your way so that you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I said, I can't promise that I'll fix everything, but I can promise this: I'm loud, dumb, and obnoxious, and I don't stop. I'll keep going. You know what I mean? I'll keep arguing, and I'll work with anybody who's willing to work to make this state, this nation, and the lives of our people better. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever. If you're willing to do the work, then I'm there for you. And if you're not, I'll be there to point out that you're not. So again, my name is Ryan Inchosby. That's Chief Chops, if you can't remember Inchosby, and I don't blame you. I'm running for Arkansas District 24. If you've seen one of these things on the deal or whatever, that's me. I'm the no money candidate for right now, so we'll see what we can do better.